Hi everyone, welcome to SHBC 2022. I'm Dr. Jerry Gu from Khoo Teck Puat Hospital and the chairman of the organizing committee. We are excited to welcome everyone to the largest and most iconic health and biomedical congress in Singapore, where we have over 1,000 participants gathered here at Singapore Expo, and another 2,500 of you watching this live online for this inaugural hybrid edition of SHBC. This is a special year for SHBC, as NHG Flagship Congress celebrates its 20 years milestone. We appreciate everyone for all your valued support over the 2 decades. And we are honored to have you with us on this meaningful journey as we strive together to achieve adding years of healthy life for Singapore. For the next 2 days, we have curated an exciting lineup of programs. Topics revolve around SHBC 2022 theme of reinventing healthcare, where we discuss about redesign and transformation of our healthcare ecosystem to tackle the future challenges as we move with the Healthier SG strategy. To encourage extended learning, you can revisit any of the sessions after the events, as the video will be uploaded and available for on-demand viewing until next year. I also urge everyone, on-site and online, to ask questions through Pigeonhole as the day progresses to maximize your learning. The moderators, panelists and speakers will attempt to answer as many questions as possible. So, post your question for an active discussion. For our on-site participants, we have an entire exhibition area at the Max Nature Gallery that is filled with interesting booths and exhibits for you to check out during the break. Presenter will also be at the Poster Village during lunchtime to share their research work. Do take your time to enjoy the in-person engagement and experience the buzz and vibrancy of the SHBC. On behalf of the organizing committee, I hope you will have an enriching learning experience at SHBC 2022.
Hi everyone, it's just 11:05 and we're going to turn on the live stream for our online participants in a count of 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So hi everyone again, welcome back to the session 2 of the SHBC 2022. I'm Dr. Chan Jun Zik, one of the senior residents from the Department of Orthopedic Surgery at Khoo Teck Puat Hospital.
And I'm Dr. Ang Ren Xuan, senior resident with the Department of Geriatric Psychiatry at the Institute of Mental Health. And we are your MCs for session 2 of SHBC 2022. For online participants that just logged in, a warm welcome to you. We invite you to send in your questions through the Q&A tab that you see at the top of your screen. For the on-site audience, please scan the QR code on the table stand. And do keep the questions coming in, and the panelists will try their best to answer their questions.
I would now like to introduce you to the second plenary speaker for today. We have Mr. Yi Wee Teng, Managing Director from Grab Singapore. Mr. Yi is responsible for leading business, strategy, and operations for Grab in the market. And his experience spans a breadth of industries including transport, financial institutions, and energy. Let us put our hands together to welcome Mr. Yi on stage to share with us on the plenary topic of reimagining health workforce with a marketplace workforce. Mr. Yi, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm Wee Teng from Grab Singapore. At the height of the pandemic, our nation faced a huge shortage of healthcare workers. And just last week, Minister Ong mentioned that by 2030, we still need another 24,000 nurses in our industry. At the same time, more than 100,000 residents in Singapore today are not in the workforce. And they are not in the workforce mainly because they are taking care of their family at home. And they are unable to find jobs in traditional roles. So platforms like Grab, with the help of technology, have shown that using gig workers, we are able to increase the size of the labor force. I'm here today because I believe the healthcare industry may similarly benefit from leveraging gig workers in a safe manner, but also at the same time, hopefully at a reduced cost. I would like to share a few potential ideas and bring you on a journey on possibility on addressing future similar crises. In today's presentation, I'm going to talk about how and why Grab got started, and also share how it can be applied to the healthcare industry. But first, let me just take a step back and explain what a marketplace is. A platform like ours, a marketplace is really to match demand and supply. For Grab, our demand is from the people like you and me, consumers, who book a car ride or get a food delivery into your home. On the supply side, we have our merchant partners, who are the people preparing the food, the merchants, and also our driver and rider partners. In my presentation, I'm going to refer to our drivers, the gig workers, as partners. And for us, Grab, all our supply for our drivers, they're all gig workers. Well, we recently celebrated our 10-year anniversary. Today, we are in 8 countries in Southeast Asia and more than 400 cities in this region. And the impact to the labor force is significant. Just last year alone, we estimated that almost $9 billion was earned by our merchant and driver partners. At the same time, we were able to provide tools to empower micro entrepreneurs to get on board for the very first time on the online world. So many of these SMEs who used to only have online businesses, offline businesses, have now online presence through our platform. We're also able to use our Grab Academy upskilling training platform and help to upskill almost 800,000 of our partners. Now, let's shift our focus a little bit and ask ourselves, why do people become gig workers? And this is a very typical answer you get. If you go to book a ride, ask the driver why. If you ask drivers, do a survey today, 65% of them will say the reason why they become a gig worker is because of the flexibility it provides. They have their own lifestyle, and gig work provides that suitability for their lifestyle that they need. They want to be their own boss. They have their own time, own target. So that's the major reason why they become gig worker. Secondly is on career transition. Many of them are with us because they are in transition between careers. They're in between jobs. This became very prevalent during the height of COVID, when many people lost their jobs. They join and become a gig worker temporarily. So gig work today has actually become an alternate safety net for many of us. And lastly, if you ask our part-timers, so these are mostly people who already have a full-time job, why they also do gig work, is because they want to earn additional income. With macroeconomic headwinds today, rising inflation rate, people need more income, and so we saw many of them join us to have their income increase every day. Well, the beauty of a technology platform is its ability to scale very quickly. When Pokemon was launched, more than 50 million downloads were done within the first 19 days of their launch. And for us, it's no different. I don't know if many of you remember when we first started in Singapore, we were still called Grab Taxi. And we only have one service, which is you book a taxi. Today, we have multiple services on our platform, not just in Singapore, but in other countries. So on the transport side, we started with 4 wheels, and then we moved to 2 wheels in countries that have them, like Indonesia and Vietnam. And then we moved to 3 wheels, Grab Tuk Tuk in Cambodia. Also on the delivery side, we also not just deliver food, but also help to deliver packages today. And then in Singapore, we have other services that actually came about because we were able to upgrade and upskill our drivers to do more. If you open our app today, you see services like Assist Plus, which is for wheelchair to go into a car without dismounting the passenger. Grab Pets and Grab Family. So, some of these new services actually require upskilling. It requires the drivers to get trained, invest their time, in some cases invest certain amount of money for them to get upgraded to upskill. You know, we partnered the likes of SSG, WSG, and many institutions here. And we offer a lot of courses to our partners to get them trained. And if they want to move on to another role, please do so. But many times, a lot of them just don't want to do it. And when we ask them why, one of the biggest reasons is the question of what's the end or the outcome after I get trained? Do I get to move to a different role? If I go and take a diploma today, will I get a job in another company? And we cannot guarantee that, obviously, because we can't hire them. So there's a lot of reason why, that's the main reason why a lot of our partners don't want to get trained. But by providing certain upskilling for them that guarantees them a better outcome, a better earnings income, many of them actually will sign up. An example is Grab Pets. So for those who don't know, Grab Pets is basically transport your pets with the owners. And here we actually provide training for our partners who wants to be part of the Grab Pet service. Mr. Patrick Wong here is a reputable and experienced dog trainer. He'll come in and give training to our partners, train them, teach them about how to handle larger dogs, cats, hamsters. One of the things that he shared with us is if you have a hamster, be very careful when you transport them. Because once it gets out from the cage, it will go into all the hidden places, the nooks and crevices, and start biting the wires. So parents, if you have kids and hamster and you're transporting them, please make sure the cage door is closed. One thing is important to note is gig workers are not unskilled workers. Many of them come with background, with some skill set from their previous job. We realized this when, at the height of COVID, obviously our car drivers do not have enough jobs. People are staying at home, working from home, airport is closed, no travelers. So we wanted quickly to launch something to help our drivers to supplement their income. And that's when we launched Grab Anything. So Grab Anything leverages the gig workers' previous experience. And some of these skills are not that technical, and they're able to do it. So things like aircon cleaning, home cleaning. And we actually see quite a huge impact. They're able to supplement and help our drivers during this downtime. And the jobs are actually quite lucrative in the sense the value of those jobs are quite high, more than $130 per job. Now, so after launching so many services, working in so many countries, what have we learned from our users and also our service providers, what do they value the most? 3 things I'll share. First is about transparency. Transparency on the price, transparency on the credentials of the service provider. All these things are very important. Just that transparency will give the users the confidence to book something on the app. Number 2 is ease of use. There's hundreds and thousands of apps out there today. How do you make sure the customer journey is smooth, is not clunky? The customer is able to look at the service, look at what's available, book, make payments, deliver the service, and even customer service at the end if there's any issues. So this whole customer journey is very important, and it's actually very valued by both the service providers as well as users. And lastly is on two-way communication. Basically, it allows, because as a platform, you don't want to be the one making, be the middle person doing the communication all the time. You need to allow the user and the service provider to chat. It may sound a bit basic, but it's not simple, because you want to make sure you protect the personal data of both sides of the party. So we need to make sure they're able to communicate, but not getting personal data like phone numbers or addresses. The communication also allowed to give reminders to the service providers. Hey, you have a job in so-and-so place in 2 hours' time, please start making your journey there. So all these are very important, and these are the 3 things that are very important. Okay, so let's move to the healthcare side. What problems are we trying to solve? We're trying to solve the shortage of healthcare workers here. And we know the reasons why, mostly, like lack of manpower, number 1, with the reducing birth rate in Singapore, with the shrinking workforce, there's a demand for more and more, the need to increase the number of workers in our industry. In addition, the COVID situation the last few years has really caused a lot of shortages in terms of workers, not just Singapore, but globally. And recruitment has become more and more difficult for everyone. And lastly, my 2 previous speakers talk about this a lot, the rising demand on healthcare services. Aging population, the higher number of burden of chronic diseases is contributing to the need to increase the labor force in the healthcare industry. So the question to ask here is, can gig workers help to supplement some of these workers, and can it be one of the solution to the problem? I think yes. Broadly, remember the 100,000 workforce that I mentioned earlier on, 100,000 residents that are not in the workforce just now. Many of them are actually women, because they're most of the time, women are the ones, the primary caregivers in our society. Are they able to do certain jobs, play certain roles in the healthcare industry that may be not so technical? As a layman, I put up some suggestions here. Chaperone, do some packaging, deliver medication. And over time, as we get more and more confident, we can get them to do more and more higher technical job, like nursing assistant, for example. So I think there's a spectrum of roles that is possible to be played by gig workers, just where we want to start. I'm sure many of you today, right now, sitting in your chair, asking, hey, how about safety? How about security? Actually, that's my first thought as well when I was asked to come and give this talk. The safety and security concern is huge, especially for healthcare. But I do think technology today has come to a point that it can help a lot in terms of increasing safety. I'll give you a couple of examples. The first one is facial recognition. This is a technology, yes, it's new maybe a few years ago, but today everyone has it on your smartphone. We want to make sure the driver is the actual driver who signed up to drive on our platform. Having worked in many countries in Southeast Asia, I can tell you the innovation and creativeness of people trying to fraud and scam on our system is just amazing. And so we have learned how to prevent this as best as we can. And I do think that technology like this can help to improve safety and security. Another example is using location, GPS. Here what you see is actually we do monitor our passengers and drivers continuously while they're on the ride. If, say, the passenger is going on the east side and then we detect that the car is moving to the west side, we send a notification to the passenger and say, hey, are you all right? Do you need help? And with a few easy taps, the passenger can tap, yes, I need help, and it connect you very quickly to the local law enforcement agency. And this is not, as I mentioned, is not just to monitor the passengers, but also to monitor the drivers, because we do have bad actors on our passenger side. So, how does a typical day of a gig worker look like? Sarah here has 2 young kids, still in primary school. Her husband works in a typical 9-to-5 job in the office. She wakes up, prepare breakfast for the kids, send the kids to school. And then she realized, hey, I got some time in the morning to do some work. So she turned on her app. Notice that my colleague here has taken the liberty to name the app the NHG Gig app. Obviously, it's not from marketing, but she turned on the app and started to look for a job. And she realized, hey, there's a slot in Tan Tock Seng Hospital for 2 hours. Why do I do that work? So she traveled Tan Tock Seng, work for 2 hours. In the afternoon, she had to run some errands, prepare lunch, pick her kids up from school, and maybe send them to enrichment class. And then realize, in the afternoon, hey, I got another hour of free time. Why don't I turn on the app again and work for 1 hour for that additional income? And actually, and she finished at 5, go home, have dinner with the family. This is a very typical profile of a gig worker. And you realize that if you speak to them every time you take a ride. So the attractiveness of this is obviously the flexibility of the schedule and allow the workers to come into the pool of workforce. At the same time, they are able to do what they need to do for their personal life. One question I get is, how do you build loyalty with gig workers? Because they are not our employees, but how do you make sure we build loyalty with them so that when it comes the time when we need them, they'll come on board and help us? So there are many, many ways. This is just one way I'm going to share. In Singapore, we have this thing called Emerald Circle. Basically, it's a loyalty program. It's a tiered loyalty program. And the stickier you are with Grab, the more benefits you get. Benefits like insurance, discount on fuel, all these things will give them. So really to increase stickiness and loyalty through some tiered program. On top of that, we spend a lot of time speaking to our partners, asking them what do they need, what's important to you. One of the things they mentioned is, I want to make sure my kids are able to go to school, get higher education. So we created these scholarship and bursaries for them. So every year now, we give 10 scholarships and 200 bursaries to our partners. And really, during this ceremony, it's really, really great to see the parents coming together with the kids. They're so proud of their kids. We also, for the first time this year, marched in the NDP. And this contingent, for many of you who don't know, is actually made up of not just Grab employees, but also our partners. Half of them are our driver and delivery partners. And it's really good because we march as one team, one Grab. And actually, when we send out a survey, a form to our partners and say, hey, who's interested to march? Remember, this is 14 weekends they need to sacrifice to march. We actually opened the form for 4-5 days, wanted to open for 4-5 days, but within 4-5 hours, we got hundreds of people sign up that we need to shut down the form because we were afraid that if we open it, continue for 4-5 days, we'll disappoint thousands and thousands of partners. So really, many of them are looking to have some identity and with the company, and this is one way to create more loyalty and stickiness. Why is loyalty and stickiness important? Because when we need them, when we send out the clarion call for help, they'll come and join us. GrabCare, for those who don't know what this is actually a special service that we launched for the healthcare workers. It's actually one of the proudest moments of my Grab career, to be honest, to be able to do this. So when we first heard that nurses and doctors were having trouble, this at the beginning of COVID, were not able to get a car ride to and from hospital, our team came together and tried to launch this as soon as possible. Within 1 weekend, we managed to do an amazing job. And there are three things that make this work, obviously. One is our team, not just our operation team, but our technology team, dropped everything and started working on this 100%. We also sent out a survey because we have a technology that's not good enough. We need our drivers. So when we sent out a survey and asking, hey, drivers, how many of you are willing to do this? We got 2,000 responses within 24 hours and thousands more a few days after that. So many of them, remember, we didn't give extra incentive for them to join. Many of them joined because they just want to help and do what they can for the healthcare workers. Thank you. Lastly, we also need, obviously, our healthcare partners. Today, we have 16 healthcare facilities as part of GrabCare. But here, I'm told by my colleague, I must thank the team in Tan Tock Seng Hospital for being the first partner for this program. Without them, we couldn't have launched this, and we are so glad they took the first step with us and willing to do this with us. So thank you, Dr. Eugene So and your team in Tan Tock Seng for doing this with us. So, I talk about loyalty, stickiness, but sometimes, as much as we do with good intention, things do not work out. I actually got special permission to share this, so please enjoy. So what you see here is a screenshot shared by a member of parliament who shall remain unnamed. What happened was his colleague tried to book a ride from parliament to Tan Tock Seng Hospital. As you can see, multiple drivers cancel on the passenger. The passenger didn't have GrabCare, the service I mentioned just now, because the passenger is not a healthcare worker. So the passenger booked a normal Just Grab ride. But you can see, despite all this work, we tried to do the right thing. The road is not smooth. We know that. So there's always ups and downs. But internally, the joke is not the drivers not wanting to pick up doctors and nurses to hospital. It's more likely our drivers do not want to pick up politicians. So I want to leave you here with a challenge to open your hearts and minds to the possibilities of a marketplace workforce. Uncharted roads are always bumpy, and there will be a lot of challenges. Rosanna Ali here has cerebral palsy. And for 7 years, she tried to look for a permanent job, but couldn't. But now she's a Grab food rider for many years now and has her own income and very independent. With the continued shortage of workers in the industry, we do think gig worker may be a solution, maybe a part of the solution. And if any of these come to fruition, Grab is more than happy to be a thought partner in the process. Well, it's not often that I get to stand here and speak to a group of healthcare workers. For on behalf of Grab, I want to thank all of you for your hard work, sacrifice, and commitment in the last 3 years, taking care of us and our family. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yi, for the insightful and wonderful sharing. I'm sure all of us here have learned a lot from your experience, and this certainly provides some food for thought for all the audience here today.
Mr. Yi, may I ask that you take a seat on the stage while I invite up the moderator and panelists for the panel discussion on Transforming the Health Workforce. So our moderator for this session is Associate Professor Wong Hon Tim. He is the Clinical Director, Center for Healthcare Innovation. He is also the Senior Consultant with the Department of Ophthalmology at Tan Tock Seng Hospital. And he has served as the Chairman of the Board of Directors for Guide Dogs Singapore since 2017. Joining Prof. Wong is a team of esteemed panelists. They are Prof. Lita Chew Sui Jin from SingHealth, Dr. Benjamin Koh from Ministry of Health, Ms. Chelvin Low from Skills Future, and lastly, Ms. Clara Sin from National University Health System. Let us welcome Associate Prof. Wong and our panelists up on stage. And as they are walking up, I'd like to invite everyone to key your questions into Pigeonhole right now. Okay, now that everyone's on stage, I will hand the time over to our moderator. Over to you, Prof. Wong.
Thank you very much. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our panelists as well. It's good to see you all up on stage. We've had a nice pre-meeting before, and it's nice to finally get it live as well. So first of all, thank you very much for that really inspiring talk. It's always wonderful to hear talks from outside healthcare industry. That's when it becomes inspiring and maybe a bit provocative as well. It gets us thinking about things that maybe we were uncomfortable to think about in the first place. We also like to thank you on behalf of Healthcare for Grab Cares. That's really a wonderful effort. I used it 3 times during one of the circuit breakers, and I had no cancellations. So because I wasn't coming from Parliament as well. Yeah. Great, thank you. All right, so I think the job of this panel, we've had a discussion already, is to sort of help and co-understand with the audience here what is the gig economy and what are the opportunities that it holds for healthcare, and maybe what are the challenges that we might encounter if we decide to embrace it wholeheartedly. So maybe we'll start with you, Chelvin, because it's good to start maybe outside and take a broader picture first. What's the gig economy landscape like in Singapore as a whole? And what are the trends that you're seeing that might inform healthcare as we look towards it more and more?
Testing. Thanks, Hong Tim. Thanks so much for inviting SSG to this panel. I'm really delighted to be here. To the question, I think when we started looking at tracking the manpower workforce in Singapore, I must say we do see in 2021 the gig workforce, and I will explain what I mean by gig workforce in a while. The number of labor force in gig work arrangements have gone up. Today I think it stands about 230,000, and it's unprecedentedly high in the last more than 10 years. And I think the growth was about 12% year on year. So that's really quite high, at least in Singapore context. And I think when they talk about the gig workforce, it's actually quite broad. It talks about the platform workers, it talks about freelancers, it talks about people in contract work, can be shorter contract, longer contract work. You can also talk about people with really part-time, just basically flexible work arrangements. And I think in Singapore, we start to see that in healthcare. When you look into the hiring demand numbers of healthcare, you start to see that since 2021, the numbers have been creeping up for hiring demand of nurses. The numbers are still small, I must say, but I think it's a good start. Nurses, medical, social workers. We also see that for medical as well as dental receptionists, which I think the earlier panel talked about as well, right? And so these are early numbers, I think, but I think it's really encouraging. And what we are seeing is it's not just healthcare. I think in the social service sector, in the basically the care economy sector, like childcare as well, we start to see hiring companies hiring more people with these flexible arrangements. So I think this is really encouraging. And I think another sector that SSG is very, very close to our heart is really the training and the education sector. In this sector, I think during COVID as well, we see a lot of instructors coming on board. So these are agile instructors. They come on board, they could have a full-time job, but they come on board as a part-time trainer. And they bring valuable professional expertise with them, and then they join us and join our training partners. So I think this is another sector we start to see. You'll call it gig workforce, but I will call it a flexible workforce on different arrangements. Yeah.
Thank you, yes. And thanks for reminding us that there are actually already examples in healthcare, or maybe smaller and quasi-examples. Some of us may be familiar with Homage, and Chelvin, you and I were talking just before this. Both of us are users of Homage, which is a digital platform where you can actually engage gig workers to provide respite care for families who are in need of temporary help. That's a great example. Jagami is another one. And actually, from a much longer time before, I guess GP locums could be considered a gig economy, as well as perhaps private anesthetists who are always on call to see where the next surgery could be from. So we've had examples like this before. But Benjamin, let's say from the ministry's point of view, is this a feasible model for healthcare?
Okay, good morning, everyone. I think, first of all, I did tell Chelvin that I'm not so comfortable using the word gig, gig worker as applied to healthcare, but I think for today's discussion, I think maybe in the spirit of the gig worker, let's take it that we shall simplify the nomenclature. I think the gig economy, gig workers have always, as we have mentioned, been quite central to healthcare. So this is not something new. In fact, I would say that they are a valuable part of the healthcare workforce. So, for example, locum doctors, without them, GPs would not be able to operate, right? They can't take leave, they can't go on emergencies and stuff like that. So in that spirit, healthcare workers having this sort of flexible work arrangements, being able to perhaps supplement our core healthcare workforce has always been central and an integral part, an important part. Now, how does the ministry then view the gig economy as part of the healthcare workforce? Maybe I'll just share some personal views. I think the healthcare sector is rather heterogeneous, so it's a little bit difficult to have a general answer on whether the gig economy can be a central part of healthcare or not. And when I say heterogeneous, there's the public sector, the private sector, the ILTC sector. You have outpatient settings, inpatient settings, various other clinical settings, even in the community. And when you talk about healthcare workforce, you are talking about nurses, pharmacists, allied health professionals, doctors, care assistants, and even auxiliary personnel within the hospitals and in the community. So I think the answer for how the gig economy can supplement the healthcare workforce really has to be customized according to the setting and the context. And part of my discomfort about using the word gig is also I think healthcare is a little bit different from other sectors. In other sectors, you will refer to a service provider and a client. But I think inherently within the healthcare family, and I have practiced medicine the early part of my career, I don't like to refer to patients as clients. They are patients to whom we owe a duty of care. So the framing needs to be a little bit different. I'm not just providing a service. I have a duty of care, and I'm providing that care to you, right? And for healthcare, a lot of times, as I mentioned, it's heterogeneous. But we are really moving towards integrated care with care teams and away from episodic care in that sense. But I do acknowledge there will be instances in healthcare where care still has to remain episodic, and that's where there are some opportunities perhaps for the economy to play a much larger role. So all in all, I don't bore you with my long elaboration, but I think that the core of the healthcare workforce necessarily has to be what it is now, in that sense, professionals, full-time, working as a team, taking care of our patients, in that sense. But I do acknowledge the trends, I do acknowledge the needs of the healthcare sector, and I would say I do agree completely that the gig economy and the gig workforce is here to stay, and it will only grow. And certainly in healthcare, we need to see how we can leverage on this sort of flexible opportunities, in order to make care better for our clients, and that has to be the end point.
Great. Thanks for that very positive and welcoming take on gig economy. Maybe my next few questions would be to Lita and to Clara. So for Lita, from SingHealth, what examples have already emerged that reflect this gig economy and this gig workforce that we've been talking about?
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Hong Tin. Very good morning to all, and thank you for having me here. Yeah. So I do agree with Yasmin that it's not new. It's something that we always had, actually, if you think about our locums, in our healthcare system. So particular to SingHealth, during the pandemic, we do have to think of out-of-box solution, not just to serve our patients, but also to make sure that our healthcare manpower remains resilient and supported. So I give you 2 examples, right? Now, some of you know that I'm actually practicing in an oncology setting, yeah? I'm an oncology pharmacist, yeah? So one of the examples that I'm going to share is on home chemotherapy. It's quite, people would think that, this is very complex care. How do you then, empower the market workforce to deliver that kind of care for you? So, but we did. Of course, we went through, within a month, okay, we went through many roadblocks, and we cleared that from medical, clinical, and governance and all that. But we made it with a partner. So you got to look for a partner in the community nursing space, and they have got people that you can perhaps train, and be very quickly able to deliver the service. So, we have cancer patients who are receiving chemotherapy who are curative, adjuvant, and many of those injections actually doesn't need to be in the hospital, right? It can be given at home if someone able to go to the home to have it injected. So we actually give drugs like Herceptin, which is, a monoclonal antibody. And we also give many of the hormonal injections that patients with breast cancer or prostate cancer, they need it on a regular basis. So we do that, and partnering our nursing colleagues in the community care. So our patients doesn't need to come, and because we can cross sector at one time. Yeah, I remember. So but we did that, and today we see still a few hundred cases. We do about close to 200 a month. Okay, still continuing with it despite the fact that it's open. Yeah. Now, the other example that I give is perhaps a larger allied health and pharmacy area, mainly for staff. There are times when we have to ramp up very fast, and we're going to get competent people very fast, right? So we look internal. So it's internal marketplace workforce. We do have that, and I believe NHG would have the same thing as well. So we created staff bank. We came up with the structure and the guidance at cluster level, and to allow people to come forward to offer their flexi hour, right? And also ability to come forward across different institutions to help their colleague who are in need during specific time. So, but this are being done at the cluster level with partnership with all the institutions. So there is an enrollment, yeah, and some guidance that needs to be in place, and some remunerations that we need to work out with HR, and we did that. And surprisingly, there are people come forward and offer their rest day, their annual leave, the time when they're not at work in the usual institution, 9 to 5, the 42-hour workspace. They do offer 1 day of their 2 days off to go and help sister institutions who really need to ramp up so that their own staff can have a break. So imagine if you call out to your colleague and say that, so-and-so need 4 hours off, half a day off, for someone who has worked the entire week, right? Would you do it? Many of us would step up and say that, yes, we would. So that's how staff banks started, and today we have staff banks. Many of them are actually young people who come forward because they see the meaning and the purpose behind it. Very similar to Grab Care. You know, you go out there, you call, you think people are not going to do it? No, they will. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Two great examples. Clara, from your side, from NUHS, what examples have you been growing within the cluster?
Yep. So good morning, happy to be here. So I think for NUHS, what we have started off is a basic care assistant, and that really supports our nurses in the job. We actually partner with the agency, and I think SingHealth and NHG has also done that. So what we do is to really attract, like what we think said, people who have a few hours to spare a day, like housewives. They come in, we train them on the basic care. They go through a competency checklist that our nursing colleagues guides them through, and then they assist in the wards for daily activities. For example, they feed the patients, they offer assistance to chit-chat with the patients, they keep the patients occupied. And I felt that that benefits both the care provider, which is the housewife, for example, as well as assists our nurses in the wards greatly. But as I was seated in the audience, right, and I was looking at the questions about how can we expand this, I think our difficulty now is to know who out there is available to be a gig worker or to come and assist. So if we can partner with Weeting from Grab, and maybe we can have a platform that is together with IHIS, right, like Grab a healthcare worker out there, and people can actually sign up for it, that would be great. And as you know, Prof. Philip has this river of life, right? As people sign up for work, they can decide which part of the river of life they want to participate in. Is it living well? Is it managing frailty, acute care, or living well? So the person who signs up also feel that they are part of the Healthier SG overall community, and they drive certain activities also. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, and there's some audience requests also for healthcare to partner with Grab, so I think we need to have some huddles after this panel as well. Okay, maybe we'd like to ask Ben again. We've talked a lot about Healthier SG and that move that we've got to look outwards into the community and make health better there. What are the opportunities that you see for Healthier SG and a gig economy within healthcare?
So I think the Minister has mentioned, and during the first panel, actually Healthier SG is, I guess, a set of many initiatives. Right? I mean, when you have trying to manage primary care enrollment, trying to have care plans, but also to link the patient up with community assets and trying to help, for example, the elderly age well within the community. I did see a question just now, but it somehow disappeared from the screen, about opportunities within the community and community sector, in the sense of intermediate and long-term care sector, whether we can make use of gig workers a lot more within this. And I think the answer is yes, right? We need to do a lot more to anchor care within the community. We need to do a lot more to support people aging well in the community. And these perhaps settings are those with a lower barrier to entry for gig workers. If you talk about actually working in the acute hospitals, being part of the acute care team and stuff like that. I mean, the reality is that the barrier of entry is a bit higher. But as we expand care within the community, as we Weetang talked about perhaps personal care, for example, going to people's homes and seeing what they need with regards to medication, their chores and stuff like that. I think these are opportunities we can tap on. And one of the reasons is really we don't have enough healthcare workers to do these. And we do have to tap on perhaps the larger workforce in general. And also we do want, for example, nurses to practice at the top of their license. And some of these work actually can be done by lay people with training. And this is where I think some of the opportunities for the economy will come with Healthier SG.
Thank you. Yes, we've let you had a bit of a rest for a while. I just want to confirm that you are a permanent staff and you're not a gig managing director for Grab, right? You're permanent. Okay, great. All right. So you mentioned a little bit about the a typical mindset or maybe the lifestyle of the gig worker. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Help us to understand what is that typical mindset? What are their values, their work ethic actually, and maybe their aspirations and boundaries, and how Grab and how healthcare can leverage on that to ensure good work performance and loyalty. There are many questions in the audience about loyalty in the gig economy. What are your thoughts? Yes.
Hello. Okay. So I think the gig workers, their mindset is not very different from normal employees. Right. They value the same thing as normal employees do. Obviously, income is important. We need to make sure that there's sufficient jobs for them, that they can earn enough on a daily basis. If one day they earn this much and next 2 days nothing, they very quickly not become a gig worker anymore. They do go and find something more permanent. So that part is very important. So our app needs to make sure that there's sufficient demand as well as there's no crashes. Every time when we have a technical problem in our app, is a really all hands on deck kind of crisis. Secondly, is about the benefits we can provide. Even gig workers will require some sort of minimum kind of benefits, insurance, some kind of protection that we need to provide to give them the assurance that if something happened to them, their family will be taken care of. Lastly, the one thing that they really value, which I shared just now, is the flexibility, and that's really huge, especially on our delivery riders, the people who deliver food. Many of them actually work around the neighborhood that they live in. They know which block, where is it, they know where to park, they know where's the restaurant or where's the coffee shop. And that's very attractive because they can literally step out of their house and turn on the app and start working. It's like 1 minute to the job site. So that's very attractive to them as well. And they can then go back, have lunch and go out again. So this real flexibility for them is very important. The loyalty part, as I try to share just now, is not easy. We have a team. We actually have a team called Partner Engagement and Loyalty. This is a big team that do nothing but every day speak to our drivers, our partners, understand their needs, take care of them. I mean, pandemic was bad for some of them. How do we help them? How do we make sure they are taken care of? They get additional income. We launched some services very quickly, reduce idle time and all. So basically going back, whether gig worker, employee, the needs and mindset are very similar, very similar.
Thank you. And Shelvin, we had a little bit of a chat earlier about actually their phases of life of a worker, a person in general, and how that sort of ties up to the gig economy. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I have 2 points, but to Hong Ting, your point, it's
yes.
I see, and because I sort of define gig workforce as workforce with flexible work arrangements, right? And that means it's you and me, right? All of us at different points, different parts of our life, different work stages, different life stages, we need work arrangements that are sometimes a bit more flexible, sometimes a bit less flexible. Sometimes we can afford more time to spend on work. In some stages of our life, we can't, right? So gig workforce is really whether we have the enabling structures to help us to, what I call it, gig in or gig out. Or you step back a little bit from your full-time employment, and that makes you, in a sense, it's more flexible. And that's why I say it's actually you and me, right? The aspirations are the same. We all want meaningful work. We all want flexible work. Question is whether do we have organizations, employers who are able to create the kind of enabling structures that makes gig work or flexible work the norm rather than the exception. And therefore, I sort of see it that way, right? And then when you see it from the organization perspective, you can see it from talent attraction and talent retention perspective, right? And therefore, I think gig worker are actually quite heterogeneous because it depends whether they're looking to join the sector or actually they want to stay, but they have some part of the life stage doesn't enable them to stay as a full-time, but they need to get out. But then how do you retain them on a more flexible work arrangement? So the gig workforce, when you're looking into attracting, it's about whether you can give them the flexible hours to help them to use the balance of their time to join the sector. So it need not be a full-time, it can be on a contract, it could be on a 2 times a week or 4 hours a week kind of stuff. So it depends, and therefore then you're able to attract these alternative source of talent to come in. And then if you are looking at professionals currently within the healthcare sector, but they have to, for some reason, they have to spend more time on other things, right? Then how do we give them the time out or scale back on the activities so that they can still stay, but they step back a little bit. And when they are ready, actually, they will come back on. And that loyalty that the organizations can build with the staff is tremendous. We've seen organizations who does that from different sectors. And when the staff are ready, actually they come back. And the friction is a lot lower because actually they never left. It's just that they scaled back on their duties, right? And therefore the friction is a lot less and they're able to come back. And when they come back on, you can be for sure that the loyalty with the organization is a lot more than before you started. So I sort of look at it both ways. Yeah.
Wait, that's interesting to have that concept that people might actually move between gig and permanent staff as well. That's interesting. Maybe Lita, this will mean that we might start seeing 2 camps or 2 cohorts of employees coexisting together, a gig sector within our organizations and then a perm staff sector. How do you think that will there be tensions? How will you manage? How do you think this has to be managed?
Yeah, I do acknowledge that there's this tension, but we have to manage it very well. Yeah. For example, the staff banking, you need to work with HR for the remuneration package in such a way that you don't see that move. Everybody all move part-times. Then where is that permanent workforce? So you got to be very, very careful in articulating this policy. I call it a guidance document, and also the remuneration package. But for a long time, as long as I can remember, we always been working with locum colleagues, right? So I don't think, if they're permanent locum, we know that because of certain needs and their own personal family or personal health reasons, they can't hold a permanent job, but they can work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday during the peak hours for you. You welcome them, and you welcome them because they help you to solve your, I suppose, workload issue. Yeah, so I think that coexistence and that synergy has always been around. So I don't see a problem. But with us trying now to really go out there and look at marketplace and re-look at a more flexible workforce, inviting people who are not in the institutions in and out, that transient, workforce might create tension. Yeah, I do agree that. And so that's why I think the solution, or rather the potential area that we need to look at is the HR policy, and how do you then reward, recognize full-time people at the same time, you do give due recognition and remunerations to your marketplace workforce. Yeah, so it is a fine balance.
Thank you, yes. Any other thoughts from any of the panelists regarding this fine balance that we may have to achieve with two cohorts of employees?
So actually we faced something similar when the COVID first started. We have people on food delivery who has skyrocketed demand, whereas on the driving side, the demand just dropped. So we moved a lot of the drivers to do food delivery. And then we actually created some tension between our platform workers, because the food delivery people will be, hey, this is my job, why are you taking over? And then there was also influx of people signing up to be riders to deliver food, because again, a lot of them lost their jobs. So we actually stopped and put people on wait lists to protect the existing workers. It's a hard decision, difficult decision, but we need to do that to protect the existing people already on the platform. And so there's a wait list, and only put people in when we need more people.
I mean, that's a very nimble and responsive sort of strategy. Do you think healthcare can do that? Are we as nimble as Grab? And that's actually one of the questions from the audience as well. Yeah. Any thoughts from our audience, from our panelists? That quick shift between A to B depending on demand.
Maybe I can add on my thoughts for that. I think for people who go on gig work, it's a certain profile of people, right? So for people who are permanent staff with us, they look at different things. They look at career opportunities, career progression, greater opportunity for training. So that attracts a certain profile of workers, and gig workers is a certain profile of workers. So I agree with you, think that once we are mindful of where they're coming from and what actually motivates them, and then from there we work out balance in terms of pay structure, in terms of benefits. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Shelvin.
I just wanted to add that I totally agree that the policies need to be quite clear and quite fairness needs to be there, right? So you cannot have like freelancers taking a lot more, clocking a lot more hours and in the end getting more paid than your full-time staff. So there needs to be safeguards and make sure that, you know, it's fair for both camps, because you still, I fully agree, Lita, that we do need our core healthcare team, because they really, really are the ones delivering the day-to-day care, right? But there are some of these alternative, and I think not all roles are suitable to be gig as well. There are some roles, the friction is a bit lower, like what Ben was saying. You can move in a bit easier, and for those supporting roles, especially maybe more on the community side, it is easier to move in and support the core workforce. And I think with from a HR perspective, with the different policies in place, then you sort of can have keep your core, at the same time have access to an alternative talent pool.
I think that really is trying to find a balance, right? We shouldn't swing from one extreme to the other, where you have an entirely full-time workforce and then say now, I mean, I'm talking for healthcare. Every industry is different. But for healthcare, you shouldn't swing to the other extreme and say, okay, so now the gig worker is the most valuable and is king, and therefore we should try to incentivize them just because we want to attract them in. So I do agree completely with Shelvin that actually in doing this, we do need to ensure that we don't create perverse incentives for people who are actually very happy doing their full-time job, then to transit to perhaps a gig arrangement, when actually, if they wanted a little bit more flexibility, the HR department should, in my view, be open enough to offer them some sort of flexible arrangement. But I was wondering whether you wanted us to answer that question there on the screen or not.
Yes, I think we're kind of answering it at this point in time. How do we make changes to anticipate demand? How responsive can we be?
I think the healthcare sector is extremely responsive. We don't give ourselves enough credit. I mean, you just look at COVID and how we responded overnight. We changed the way we delivered services. Yeah, whether it's in the emergency departments, whether it's in the clinics, we move people from one department to another. I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of pain on the ground, but we don't give ourselves enough credit collectively. In this halls, I remember 2 years ago, I was with the NHG team, working on the CCF with lots of locums, with the SAF, with SingHealth, it was almost overnight that we got these 10 halls of expo up and ready, redeployed people from within all our healthcare institutions, supplemented with, I might say, the gig workforce. And we did it. And I would say that I'm not so sure other sectors can pivot so fast. So if we set our hearts and minds to it, to a singular purpose, we can.
Thank you very much. All right, let's move to our top question from the audience at this point in time. And it's really about ensuring standards and safety. If we could bring that question onto the screen. So, let's see. Gig workers for doctors and nurses and locums, equals to locums. Is there an issue of expertise and ensuring safety? First of all, how does Grab ensure standards while allowing this gig workforce to happen? And then how do you think healthcare is going to maintain standards when we apply to healthcare? Maybe with Wee Tang first?
Sure. I think there are a few ways to ensure safety. I shared some of the things. Obviously, as I mentioned, nurses and doctors probably will not be your first call for gig workers because you know they are really, really well-trained people. So we are talking more of the lower spectrum of technical expertise that's required. So there are many ways. Even our drivers today, they require certain vocational license. It's regulated, obviously. There's some checks, background checks required to make sure they can get a vocational license before they can drive. The other things is we also allow users to provide feedback regularly. After every ride, you're allowed to put your rating. And if there's any issue, even when you put a 4-star, there's a 5-star system. When you put a 4-star, you're asked for a reason. And if a certain driver get X number of certain issues, for example, safety, driving too quickly, too fast, you get flagged very, very fast, and then we will send notice to the driver and remind them to drive safer. So this feedback loop is actually important for us to see who are the better workers. And of course, then we will need to take some action. Obviously, the very bad ones that we need to suspend or even ban from the platform. So that's one of the ways to ensure safety. I think there's a question about ensure standards and allowing flexibility. Again, there's ways around this where we need to make sure our workers, first of all, get certain permission from their work, if they are full-time employee, they need to get permission from their current employer, because some employers do not allow moonlighting. Secondly is, again, this flexibility is there. It's your own time, own target. If you have been working for many hours and you're tired, then the worker shouldn't be working and go back home and rest. So this allows them to, again, ensure some standards while having flexibility.
Any thoughts from our healthcare colleagues there? How that challenge of maintaining standards the same way that Wee Tang alluded to?
Maybe I should share a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah. Because of the staff bank experience,
Mm-hmm.
the two things that you need to put in place and to ensure safety. Yeah. In our policy guidance, we make it very clear. Whoever wants to participate in this must be our fully registered staff. I'm talking about professional marketplace workforce. Okay. So you must be a fully registered person. You must be practicing for at least a year already, and you're really fully registered practitioner. And your performance rating in your institutions for the past 3 years must be B at least, okay? So there is some standards in terms of competency and assurance of the good standing of the person, right? And the other thing on the flexibility bit is that, it's just like, I used the word enrollment earlier. There is actually an enrollment form. And an enrollment form, whoever come forward, right, would need to state which are the days that he or she would like to volunteer and come forward to help. So those are captured in the system. So we don't have fantastic technology like yours, So we do it a lot manually, and Excel is our secret. Okay. Yeah, but you don't need many, and you just need to know when to press the right button at the right time to activate and solve a manpower crunch issue. Yeah.
Any other responses? Maybe Ben and then Clara after that. Yeah.
I do agree that patient safety is one of our main, if not our paramount considerations in healthcare. And but I must say there are already existing frameworks in place, whether it's to govern the full-time workforce or to govern the gig workforce, right? In that sense. So as Lita mentioned just now, healthcare professionals do need to be registered, or rather there are certain classes of healthcare professionals that needs to be registered. And you cannot employ someone as a medical locum if they don't have a registrable practicing certificate in that sense. Same for nurses, pharmacists, for example. So that we do have to conform to these existing regulations and governance frameworks, even if we do transit to the gig economy. And it's not just healthcare professionals. Clinical premises do have to be licensed, and there are certain sets of regulations that you have to adhere to. So I would say that even as we embrace the trend of the gig economy and the gig workforce, and I said to supplement what we have, and also because they are an integral part of our workforce, we do have to continue to conform to these regulations. Now, from time to time, there might be those that that might come in the way of us employing gig workers, for example. I mean, these are things that are open for discussion, but I don't think we should compromise patient safety in order to do that.
Clara, your thoughts?
Add on, I think the difference between, let's say, healthcare and versus Grab, right? If you're a Grab driver, it's you are in the car alone with the customer or the passenger. But for us, if you have a gig worker in our midst, perhaps in the initial phase, they are closely mentor observed. And then the next phase, then they can be more independent. So we have the benefit of them actually working amongst our midst, and we can observe them initially to make sure they are of a certain standard before we let them act more independently with our patients. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, let's turn our sights from the patient's point of view or the client's point of view if we talk about Grab. And this is a question that I'm just going to put up here. And it is a question that says that the concept of gig economy in healthcare seems to be against the concept of continuity of care. There are also other questions which allude to that, in that it is recipients. We have to look from the recipient's point of view. How are we going to reconcile this sort of gig workforce with continuity of care? Dieter, again, any thoughts there with some of your models that you've already worked
Thanks.
out?
Yeah, great question. On the surface, it seems that there is this issue with continuity of care because the workforce is deemed as temporary, transient, and therefore, where is that longitudinalness, in the care process? But the thing a little bit differ, all right? And you can ask yourself, then how do I then, knowing this as a potential weakness, how can I then put in place processes to safeguard this? Because at the end of the day, patient is still your patient. It's just like, in the example that I gave of chemotherapy at home with a home care provider. We don't pass the patients to the home care provider. It's still our patient. So we partner. I use the term partnership, okay, as the key emphasis for such arrangement to ensure that there is continuity in the care that we offer to our patients. So we partner our home care provider. We get consent from our patients. We introduce the patients to the care provider. There are specific nurses that we work with because we want to work with familiar team of nurses that we train and have relationship with because we can extend trust in that manner. And then we can continue to empower and engage them in a more focused manner. So if you do that kind of have that kind of process in mind when you set up such an arrangement, then the issue of continuum of care can be addressed. The documentation, the follow-up after the visit by the community nurse is done by our own staff, and the documentation in the electronic medical record is done by our own staff so that our physician or oncologist knows that the patient actually had no problem post-injection and that they're fine. If there's any issue, we would have intervened and continue, right, that care process. So it's a partnership. So it is a solvable problem.
Yes, Clara, any thoughts?
Yeah, just to add on, I think it won't be in conflict because if a patient has a care plan, and we upfront explain to patient what is the care plan. The care plan can be performed by multiple people to support that one care plan. That's the first point. Second, I think we are linked by a health record. So like between NHG and NUHS, we share Epic. So the health records and systems are actually there. So I don't think it's in conflict. I think it's multiple hands supporting one care plan. Thank you.
That's interesting because I've, as a user for Homage, I also had to have that view of whether I'm loyal to the gig provider, the gig worker, or to the platform. So after using Homage for a few months, we found out who were the carers that we liked, and we could actually request for them as well. And I think a little bit different from Grab, I guess, where there's platform loyalty more than sort of staff loyalty. But in healthcare, there may be that demand from the patients to always have that same person coming to this person's home. So any thoughts there?
Let me try to answer from Grab point of view. And we see that as well on our platform. So we have drivers who, let's say let's say pick up a passenger from airport, and the driver knows that the passenger is here for a few days.
Yes.
The driver may give them, hey, this is my private number, and cut Grab off. And that's fine because we see them all the time. But I think what's important is we need to ask ourselves what value we provide, what additional value we will provide for both our user and our driver to continue using our platform. So things like, if you go directly with a driver, you may not get the insurance, you may not get the coverage or assurance that something happens to you, we'll take care of you. And then there are also other issues, people leaving things in the car. You won't believe what things that people leave in the car, but sometimes they leave dogs and even children in the car. But without, you do it yourself and you don't have the platform to identify how to retrace your lost phone and all these things, then there's another reason why you shouldn't book off platform. So that, again, we keep asking ourselves what are the value proposition that we provide, from booking to payments, assurance, and all these things. Yeah.
Benjamin, any thoughts?
I think there are some settings that lend itself better to the use of gig workers. Because not all, as much as I hesitate to say this, not all care need to be continuous. So, for example, if you go for your COVID vaccination, right? That's a setting that actually lends itself very well to gig workers. You get your vaccination. It's more or less a one-off, yeah? But there are certain other settings that perhaps continuity of care is a lot more important. Management of chronic diseases, for example, which is again why we are rolling out primary care enrollment under Healthcare SG, right? It's one example. Now, having said that, I do not think that the gig workforce and continuity of care are entirely mutually exclusive. There are ways around it. So as Lita has mentioned, proper documentation and electronic medical records, however painful, is one way to ensure continuity of care even though the provider is different. And in the management of chronic diseases, it's really different settings, different teams. When you send, the GP sends someone for food screening, and it's a different provider. But the medical records actually and the care plan is what strings it together. So there's to be a certain discipline to maintain that care plan and medical records. And this is one example or one way in which we can overcome some of this continuity of care issues. The other is, I think some of us mentioned, whether as a locum, you locum in packages, or as you provide home services or other services, and this leads to some loyalty to the particular gig worker in that sense. So I think there are ways around it. We just have to be creative and disciplined in how we do it.
Right. Thank you. Right. I'll put up another question next. It's still based on sort of the client or patient's perspective. Do we still need to convince our patients that this is going to be something that they need to get used to? Or are we already in a good state that we don't have to keep sending this message that a gig workforce is going to be more prevalent in healthcare? Clara, any thoughts here? Do we need messaging?
I would say that we will need more messaging, because when patients come to the hospital, they expect a certain level of delivery, and they expect to be served, managed by the doctors and the nurses. But I would say that progressively patients will grow to accept it, because it's an aging population. They know that healthcare is very stretched. And I think if we assure them that the gig workers that work with us are well trained, right? They are supervised, and they can deliver safe care and good care, I think patients will grow to accept them and accept them as part of the healthcare community. I think it's even more important that as we move on to Healthcare SG and we engage the community and we provide care in the community, that's where we will have even more gig workers supporting us. And patients will then get to experience a different kind of care in the community setting.
Any other responses from the panel? Yeah. Chelvin, yes.
I just wanted to add from, I'm not a healthcare professional, so I add from a user perspective, right? There are two different examples, and I will share. In the example of a teaching environment, right? Today we have a lot of teachers in MOE, and sometimes when the teachers go on leave, they are part-time teachers. But there are differences in the standards between part-time teachers and some of the full-time teachers, and sometimes we have to then share that sometimes the standards might differ. That's where there could be a little bit of the non-acceptance, right? But then in the healthcare, again, you see like what Hong Timi mentioned about Homage, Jagami, right? I've used their services as well. So I think although they work on part-time or flexible work arrangements, the standards are actually quite the same. So actually, I think it's not so much about whether they are part-time or full-time, or whether they have similar standard of care or standard of service. So if they are front-facing, do they have the similar skill level of a front-facing staff, for example? If they are about patient care, do they have the customer empathy, for example? Do they have the customer orientation skills, for example, when they face the front group of patients, for example? So at the end of the day, I think as a user myself, if the service is similar, right, and I see the same, I wouldn't say standard, but the warmth of a healthcare professional, I don't think the user will ask, are you a part-timer or are you a full-timer? Are you on a gig? Yeah.
Right. Let's move on to some other issues that we need to address. And actually, there's a lot of it alluded to even in this comment here in terms of error, safety standards again. But let's talk about training. Grab has got Grab Academy, and we spoke about that earlier, a very rather systematic way of onboarding and making sure that the right skill sets are transmitted to their workforce. If we were to see a bigger gig workforce in healthcare, and Lita, you alluded it to just now as well, do we need to also systematize that sort of training? Do they need to be trained in a different way compared to traditional training that we have? Ben, any thoughts there? Are we going to have to rethink the way we also train people when it comes to that gig workforce?
I think certainly we do have to change some of our mindsets. So again, I started off by saying that the healthcare sector is rather heterogeneous. So for professions that are regulated in that sense, I would say that there's a certain standard. You are expected to maintain your proficiency and competence, right? And there is really a certain path, whether you are locum or full-time staff within the healthcare institution, that we ought to follow those systems. Now, it's not to say that there might be institution-specific practices and protocols, and I think it is incumbent on the institution to familiarize your flexible workforce with those protocols such that the patient experience is not compromised, but more importantly, patient safety is not compromised. Now, for staff groups that are perhaps not regulated, that's where I think it is important, and we have at the ministry level been working with the clusters and even SSG on things like skills frameworks and competence maps and things like that. When you talk about a nursing aide or a healthcare assistant or basic care assistants, what are some of the skills that they will need in order to take on some of these roles, right? And even within the community, I think AIC is also part of this journey where actually we started to define what skills are needed if you were to take on this role. And that makes training a little bit more systematic, and you might even say portable, such that someone who gigs with NHG can also gig with SingHealth because the skills nomenclature is the same, and the expectations of their job is the same. So these are work in progress, but we have to push on. Otherwise, these will become impediments to a larger scale adoption of the gig economy.
It's Clara.
Yeah, so just to add on, perhaps what healthcare can do is to partner with SkillsFuture and have certain modular courses to be care coordinators, care navigators, or as we push out Healthier SG to be health coach. And these skills are in a way generic. You can, once you have this certified skills, you can work across any healthcare cluster or any healthcare organization. Yeah, thanks.
Yes,
So
Kelvin,
to add
any other
on
comments?
to what Ben and Clara said, so healthcare is one of the few sectors where we see a huge focus on the skills and the competencies, right? And it's a very deliberate effort from all the way from MOH down all the way to the clusters, a very dedicated approach. And within the hospital clusters as well, this is training roadmaps are being mapped out for all the staff, right? To make sure that nobody has this, everyone has access to the skills and the training to make sure that you can perform on the job. And we are working with AIC as well as MOH to see whether some of the newer roles, we can roll out the training on a more bite-sized manner. So that, at least for the gig workforce, right, when you look at certain tasks that you want to do, you can have training that's more specific to those tasks. So that you can sort of gig in and gig out. You know, it's a more fluid manner rather than on a role basis. Because to train for a role, you do need a stack of competencies. And that does take time. Yeah, but once you have the stack of competencies, that actually enables you to move around because it's an interoperable set. And different hospital clusters do recognize it. Yeah, but I think when we talk about, the question is then, when somebody steps back from his full-time role and take on part-time, then whether that part-time, how does it then, in order to maintain that as a part-timer, for example, maintain the currency of that set of skills, then maybe it's about making sure that they are training relevant to make sure his current set of skills is, that set of skills is current and not the entire role. Yeah, so really it's about understanding what that role can decompose into the set of skills and the tasks and be quite deliberate about the training that he needs in case there are skills deficiencies or in case there are a set of skills that needs to be more current than the rest.
Thank you. Yes,
One more
yes,
thing
Lita.
on because on the right track and properly done aspect of it, I think the patient knows best. So regular feedback from the patient will know whether your training is good enough or not. I think that's one key thing as well.
Thank you. Right, we're down to our last 4 minutes actually, and thanks audience for your fantastic questions. We're having a lot of trouble keeping up, but we think we've answered many of the issues actually that you've brought up. In our last few minutes maybe, it does seem that everyone is sort of on board with the fact that a gig workforce is here to stay and probably here to evolve within healthcare. And I'm wondering if this is the beginning to develop or plan or design a new platform, an integrated platform or a marketplace for gig workers in healthcare, and should this be done? How can this be done? The mother of all platforms for gig workers in healthcare. Any thoughts here? Ben, maybe we'll start with you. Is this something that MOH might be interested in?
I hesitate to say that the mother of all platforms is necessarily the best.
All right.
Right. I think this was a very rich discussion. We have seen that the gig workforce has always been a part of healthcare, an integral part, and the platforms actually do exist in small little niche areas, right? I mean, there are platforms for nurses, when they take on jobs, and even within the clusters, I've seen some of these. Lita talked about Excel sheets and stuff. These are all platforms in general. Do we need a large national level platform for all the clusters to use and for, I would say the gig workers to contribute as well? I think this requires a lot more thought. Just like, Grab is probably not the only platform available, right? I think that there might be room for perhaps some experimentation and some flexibility in this regard. But I think the verdict's not out. I mean, we will have to take a look. If we want to do this in a big way, then what is the best way to do it without perhaps prejudging what the solution might be?
Well, there are multiple calls from the audience for MOH to partner with Grab, so we need to see how we can follow this up later on. All right. I do need to also ask, actually, one more issue, which is professional liability and insurance here. This is quite a big issue. It's brought up by our audience as well. Let's take that last minute to address that. How are we going to view professional liability within this context? Any thoughts? Clara, for yourself? Yeah.
I think for patients who come to, so I will cover two settings, all right? I think in the hospital setting, when patients come to us, they will still, the expectation is that the hospital is responsible, regardless of who provides the care, whether is it our own permanent staff or is it a gig worker or temporary staff. So I think that doesn't change, and we have to be accountable. And because we are accountable, therefore, we have to make sure that they are properly trained, the competency checklist is in, and they're properly mentored and reviewed. So I think the responsibility is still us. Yeah.
Lita, any thoughts here on indemnity and insurance?
Yeah, I think I concur with Clara. At the end of the day, institution still is responsible for the patient. Yeah. And the professional that we send belongs to an organization as well, and I'm sure that's also backed with some indemnity. So I think, yeah, that's how it's been working. And for us, we decided to go into internal marketplace workforce because, I can't be going out and ask NHG, can you call, volunteer staff, right? So I think we do internal because we overcome this issue as well.
Well, thank you very much. It's down to 0 seconds now. I really like to thank the audience on behalf of the panel for your wonderful questions. You've kept us on our toes. And can we give a big round of applause to our panel? We thank Clara, Chelvin, Benjamin, and Lita for that wonderful session that we had. Special thanks also to Ms. Lynette Ong, Yong Keng Kwang, and Ms. Christina Lau for helping us coordinate this session. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Prof. Wong and the panelists for the fruitful and engaging discussion. May I get you guys together on stage, have a step forward and take a group photograph from our professional photographer. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Prof. Wong and the panelists. We'd like to invite you to return to your table as lunch will be served next. To be frank, this is my first time hearing the word gig worker. To relate to that, I'm actually your gig MC for today, after the event, and of course, with the permission of my department. So for our on-site audience, please remain seated as the servers will bring you the food for your table, and please remain to do so until the food is served so that you don't get your bento missed out. And for online participants, do stay on for a while more, as we are going to present the awards after I finish making this lunch announcement. For participants who had indicated vegetarian to us previously, please write down a large V on the paper provided on the table and place it in front of you, so that the server will actually know to serve the vegetarian bento to you. While the lunch is being served, we'd like to move on to the next segment for this session, the SHBC Scientific Competition Award Ceremony. May I invite Dr. Chia Pui Ling, the Scientific Competition Chairman of SHBC 2022, on stage to announce the gold winners to receive their awards. Dr. Chia, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Chia Pui Ling, medical oncologist from Tan Tock Seng Hospital. But before I begin, may I please invite Professor Philip Chu, Group Chief Executive Officer of National Healthcare Group, to please come on stage. Thanks, Prof. So the SHBC scientific competition, of which I have the honor to serve as the chairman this year, aims to serve as the platform for all healthcare professionals to showcase their research projects or new research initiatives. The scientific competition also serves as a chance for all researchers to gain exposure and also receive recognition for their outstanding efforts in the local healthcare community. They will get to share their research work with each other during the SHBC Poster Village that take place during lunch today and tomorrow, which is behind the conference hall. It was my privilege to chair over this very prestigious award as I had the opportunity to witness firsthand the amazing work and the commitment that my healthcare professional colleagues have put in. So I will be announcing shortly the winners of the Gold Award for the 17 categories. On screen, you will also be able to see the silver and bronze winners. So now, without further ado, I will start with the gold winners of the poster category. COVID-19, our response to a new challenge is for Dr. Nei Chen Mong from Khoo Teck Puat Hospital. SHBC Best Poster Award, Allied Health category, goes to Ms. Cassandra Lim, National University Hospital. But unfortunately, she is unable to join us today. So moving on, we have SHBC Best Poster Award in the category of Basic Science and Translational Research. It goes to Dr. Tan Ing Ro from National Skin Centre. Next, we have SHBC Best Poster Award, Clinical Research category. Winner is Mr. Lin Yi from Khoo Teck Puat Hospital. Congratulations. The SHBC Best Poster Award, Health Service Research, goes to Dr. Tan Kok Hien from KK Women's and Children's Hospital. He is unable to join us today, and Ms. Zan Fu is here on his behalf. Thank you. Next, we have the SHBC Best Poster Award in the nursing category. It belongs to Ms. Ge Ling Xia from National Healthcare Group HQ. Congratulations. For Singapore Primary Care Award poster category, we have Dr. Sim Sai-jen from National Healthcare Group Polyclinics. Congratulations. And now I will announce the gold winners of the oral category. So first we have COVID-19, our response to a new challenge, and the award goes to Dr. Yu Chou Chuan, Geriatric Education and Research Institute. Health Professions Education Research Investigator Award goes to Associate Professor Yip Chi Chiu from Khoo Teck Puat Hospital. Congratulations. Next, we have SHBC Student Awards Open category. The Gold Award goes to Mr. Nicholas Koh Wei Siang from National University of Singapore. The Singapore Allied Health Award goes to Mr. Tay Eng Hong from Institute of Mental Health. The Singapore Nursing Award goes to Miss Sue Ann Ling from Tan Tock Seng Hospital. Congratulations. Singapore Primary Care Award in the oral category goes to Miss Goh Ling Chia from National Healthcare Group Polyclinics. Singapore Young Investigator Award in the category of Basic Science and Translational Research goes to Assistant Professor Andy Tay from National University of Singapore. So unfortunately, he is not here today physically, so we will move on. And the next award is for Singapore Young Investigator Award in the category of Clinical Research, and the award goes to Dr. Jeremy Ho from Khoo Teck Puat Hospital. Congratulations. Singapore Young Investigator Award in Health Service Research goes to Dr. Nigel Ling from Geriatric Education and Research Institute. And now we have reached the highly esteemed award of the competition, and it is the Singapore Clinician Investigator Award. And the gold winner this year is Dr. Angela Chow from Tan Tock Seng Hospital. Congratulations. Congratulations to all the winners. Thank you, Prof. Chu, for giving out the awards, and I hope everyone has an enriching learning experience at SHBC 2022. Do visit the Poster Village and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.
Thank you to Dr. Chia and Prof. Chu, and our heartiest congratulations to all our prize winners again. We hope you can find time to visit the SHBC Poster Village located at the back of this hall after you are done with your lunch today. Over 255 posters will be presented over the 2 days. So do support your friends and colleagues who are presenting in the Poster Village sessions.
The SHBC Scientific Competition Committee would like to thank all the abstract submitters for your support. We look forward for your submissions for the scientific competition next year. Before we pause transmission for session 2, we would like to remind everyone to log back on at 1:20 p.m. as our NHG physiotherapist will lead us in a round of exercise to show us how to fend off food coma and to burn some calories from the yummy food from the lunch provided today. Enjoy your lunch and see you back at 1:20 p.m. Signing off, I'm Dr. Chan Junzik.
And I'm Dr. Ang Ren Xuan. See you later.